Hello and welcome to the Road to Autonomy. The Road to Autonomy is brought to you in part by Stantec Generation AV. Stantec Generation AV combines some of the most experienced AV experts in the industry with the resources of a global engineering firm. Stantec Generation AV provides education, consulting, assessment, and guidance to any industry interested in autonomous vehicles. Learn more at stantec.com. Hello and welcome to the Road to Autonomy. I am your host, Grayson Brulte. On today's episode, we're absolutely honored to have Abhijit Ganguly, Managing Director, Goodyear Ventures. Abhijit, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me here.
I'm excited to have you here because I'm very proud to say on my vehicle, I have Goodyear tires and they're awesome. They get us where we need to go safely. So thank you for manufacturing incredible tires. And more importantly, Goodyear's an iconic American company that's really always innovating throughout the years.
Well, thank you for your confidence in Goodyear. We love hearing that people are using and liking our products.
Goodyear was founded in 1898 with a commitment to continuous improvement and innovation. How is the venture fund contributing to this vision?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as you say, we have a rich history and proven track record of innovating in the mobility space. In the last 10 years or so, the pace of change in automotive industry has accelerated dramatically. And the way the venture fund is contributing to Goodyear's vision is by making sure that we learn about the latest happenings in the industry. And having a corporate venture fund is a great way to learn about future trends and make sure that we contribute meaningfully into those trends and help accelerate some of those. So that is one clear reason for having that fund. At the end of the day, also, we wanted to bring the best of Goodyear to some of these cutting-edge entrepreneurs who are pushing the boundaries of knowledge in mobility. So this is contributing towards the entrepreneur's success also is a key priority of the fund.
The fund stayed ahead of a lot of trends, but one of the most important trends was leading up for the past, I would say 3 to 4 years, there was a lot of talk. CES is now a car show. Well, it's a mobility show. And in 2020, Goodyear launched the Goodyear Ventures Fund at CES. Why did you make that decision at CES? Was it that you saw the trend of CES becoming probably the most important mobility show in the world and you wanted to have a very big presence there?
Yeah, we have had presence in the CES over the last few years or so, and we would continue to do that in the upcoming years. We're actually actively planning and very excited to be there again back in 2022. We announced the fund in CES with the goal of letting everyone know that we were ready to build these strategic relationships with startups through the venturing activity. We have already had relationships with startups through proof of concepts. So this was another layer of support we can provide to startups. And we really wanted to do this in a way that would help our entrepreneurs achieve their goals. And at the same time, learn from their journey along the way and inform our own priorities with those learnings. So that CES made sense as a venue because it is, to your point, the premier forum for launching new initiatives in the automotive space, at least as of late. That's kind of what made it a great place to launch the fund.
The companies that you invest in, are they able to take a deep dive on tire technology to learn about tires if they're having a mobility product, of how they can improve their top tires and mobility program through Goodyear?
Absolutely. So when I say we bring the best of Goodyear to these entrepreneurs, part of it is also our understanding of technology and tire technology and how that technology, when integrated with the vehicle control systems and the vehicle broadly speaking, can actually help driving become more safer, more efficient, and less worry-free. So I think all those things are aspects that we bring. Each deal is different. Each startup's requirements are different. We assess them and we dive in accordingly. And in many cases, to your point, our tire engineers are involved very closely with some of our startup partners to support them with the knowledge that we have internally to make their mobility applications and use cases safer, efficient, etc.
When you and the team are out looking at the mobility landscape, what do you look for in a startup? Is it the drive of the founder? Is it the technology? Is it the roadmap? Or is it how can Goodyear help accelerate the growth of that company?
Yeah, so obviously the first thing we think about is that the startup has to operate in an area that is of strategic relevance to us because we are a strategic fund and we are trying to create those strategic relationships. If that filter is passed, then it is really all about the entrepreneur and their vision and how they're bringing that about. So we place a lot of emphasis on trying to understand who it is that's leading the company and who are the co-founding team members of the startup and what they're trying to achieve, and how our strategic capabilities can accelerate their growth and how their achievements can teach us about what we want to know in that landscape. So as long as there is a happy match up there, that's kind of the deals that we enjoy making the most.
In that scenario, so it's a win-win. The startup gets access to an incredible company with incredible research, and you're helping this company grow. It's a complete win-win.
Absolutely. We encourage the startups to tell us what it is that they are looking for from us. And one of the motivations there is so that they can focus on the things that they want to do without having to duplicate things that we may be able to bring in uniquely as Goodyear to the table.
When the fund was initially being thought about internally, what did you and the team see that said, okay, now is the time to launch the fund?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So as soon as we launched the fund, we saw what is known as the pandemic of 2020, right? But far from that being a less than ideal time, we saw an incredible acceleration of certain trends that made it a very exciting, as much as it was a difficult time for everyone globally, it made it an incredibly interesting time for us to come into the market as a venture fund, because we started to see the acceleration of digitization. We started to see acceleration in robotics, in contactless. All those trends stood very clearly in front of us. With respect to why we chose to launch the fund at that time, it goes back to the earlier point that I made, which is really around the fact that the pace of change in the automotive industry, I call it breathtaking in the last decade or so. A lot has changed since we were in 2010. So that's the kind of tailwinds we saw behind launching a fund like that.
The trend towards contactless is only going to grow. If you look at data from Visa and MasterCard of transaction data, it's going all contactless. I believe that they're over the 50% mark now. Robotics is going incredibly bonkers. If you look at the supply chain, and robotics are shoring that up. And digital, there's no slowing down. Everything is going digital. So now you have these incredible trends that are becoming fabrics of society. Has that changed your approach as you look for investment opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as venture capitalists, the first thing we love is an organic underlying growth in trends that we can then identify and invest on. So we really like the fact that some of these trends, which were already underway, have been accelerated in the last year and a half. So no questions there, and it clearly points towards the areas that we should be investing in, that we are active in right now, in autonomy, in electrification, in connected infrastructure, and connected vehicles, and sustainability. So all of those things are areas that we are actively looking to invest in and continue to make bets on.
And I want to give you a shout out and a virtual high five. Your fund's already had one successful exit. You invested in TuSimple. You had an extremely successful IPO. The timing of the supply chain with the IPO, really smart, really well done on your due diligence part. Since now you're starting to see other companies in autonomy starting to move towards that commercialization phase as well. Based on that, what are your current thoughts on the current state of autonomy as it relates to the commercialization of the market?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we think that autonomy is progressing in certain use cases that are large enough and growing fast enough that it makes sense to explore autonomy in those. So trucking is an example where we have been plagued by driver shortage for a very, very long time in the industry. There were not enough drivers to be moving goods in the frequency and the quantity that they need to be moved in. To add to that, the way we have started to order online has created even more constraints on the supply chain. So you put all of that together, and then that creates a perfect storm for someone like TuSimple and some other companies that are exploring autonomy in moving goods to come forward and say, yeah, the robotaxis are under development. Maybe they'll take longer to develop, but we're not going to wait for that to happen. We are going to deploy autonomy in use cases that are probably more near term in areas where we as a society are struggling to keep up with the pace of demand. That's what gets us very excited about autonomy. Of course, yes, we are looking at robotaxis. We are trying to build products and services once that eventuality materializes. But we are not losing sight of the fact that there are use cases in moving goods which are coming forward in a meaningful way to be more near-term deployable, commercially speaking, with respect to autonomy. And that TuSimple is one such example of deployment.
I want to point out a couple of things around that. There was a segment on CNBC yesterday where they interviewed several large American retailers, and they were urging their customers, if you can afford it, start to stockpile Christmas gifts for your children now, because there's a chance to the supply chain you might not be able to have presents under the tree. And you're like, oh, that really hits you. You have to have presents under the tree if you have children. And then there was a report out of the Port of LA, which handles 40% of the nation's imports. They're currently backlogged 7 days. They can't move this stuff. With that data and what you just described, are you looking at other opportunities around the supply chain that Goodyear Ventures can help accelerate to normalize the supply chain?
Absolutely. I mean, not specific to maybe Christmas presents, but certainly our investments in autonomy are fairly broad. So we have publicly announced investments in Starship, which is, we believe, one of the leaders in last mile delivery of groceries and prepared food items and other items through the sidewalks. So we have taken an approach of autonomy on sidewalks that makes deliveries more possible and faster through robotics and more on demand through robotics. Just because it's humanly impossible to handle the volume of deliveries that we are demanding as a society today. So that's an example of us investing in companies that are exploring robotics and automation on sidewalks to deliver. TuSimple is another case where we have on highway long-haul routes that are getting explored with respect to TuSimple's autonomy. We are very excited for what they can do in terms of automating deliveries and automating goods movement. We have other investments that are not public that would be made public fairly soon that are exploring other areas of goods movement. So as I said earlier, we are actively looking to support the acceleration of these trends and support them from our products and services building capabilities for these new companies that are coming forward. And we believe that if we work in that direction, some of the challenges you articulate in the supply chain will be somewhat alleviated. Because yes, I mean, people want convenience, people want safety, and all these things can be delivered through autonomy when applied in the right use cases.
Starship, for example, during the pandemic, did they see an increase in their business of individuals on the campuses ordering more goods because they didn't want to interact with somebody?
I can't speak to exactly the performance of the business on that granular level, but at the highest level, what we saw again was digitization and contactless, and they played into those trends. And yes, college campuses are coming back, and we are excited to see some of the announcements that are coming out of Starship with respect to some of the campuses that they are already live on. They have recently announced an expansion with Co-op in England, putting more than 500 robots in the UK out there in that relationship. So we see that growing, and we see it growing simply because, if I want a $12 lunch or a $16 Cheerios and milk run from the groceries, I think these friendly robots do a terrific job of getting me what I need very, very quickly, much more than what a human-based delivery system can handle. So we remain excited by what Starship can do in terms of alleviating these constraints and bottlenecks that you referred to earlier. And they're well on that track to achieving some of those goals.
Well, Starship will do an incredible job with the robotics. Their restaurant partners are going to have to figure out packaging. So when the French fries arrive, they're not soggy, they're crispy. That to me is the big challenge. When you open it up and you bite in the French fry, like, oh no, this is not what I wanted. You're going to be like, oh yes, this is awesome. Because then you're going to continue to use the service. With Goodyear being a tire company, are you making tires for the Starships for the sidewalk bots? Is the Goodyear going down that fun thing? We got this incredible tire technology for larger vehicles, and we're going to take it down to these smaller vehicles?
We are certainly supporting Starship in their needs with respect to robots and the tires. You mentioned the fries. I would say that if the tires are not done right, your coffee might get spilled because there's too much vibration. So those are things that we would want to be looking into. But it's really all driven by Starship. So they are coming to us with certain things that they're observing in the field. And yes, we are definitely consulting them and thinking about how we might be able to help the robots be more mobile and cater towards making sure that the goods arrive in the state that the customer ordered them or wanted to have them delivered in. So yes, tires play a critical role there too, and we are supporting them as they deploy and scale in the field.
There's a lot of data that can be gathered out of tires. There's a pothole, a bumpy road, if there's construction on the road where there might be pebbles or some sort of objects, and you're like, uh-oh, the coffee spilt you don't have a happy customer. Is this where Goodyear's Sightline, the Goodyear suite of tire intelligence solutions, comes in? Because looking at that, I was like, wait a second. You've gotten all this data out of the tire. You put it into an autonomous system. Perhaps it could modify something to ensure that the coffee that you get is hot and it's not spilled.
Yeah, so let's probably move from the coffee to a package delivery that is being done, or grocery delivery that is being done because you order online and somebody has to pick up the grocery and deliver it to a pickup location. So if you look at that use case, I think the Sightline suite of products and solutions fit perfectly into making autonomy safer and more efficient. People often don't think about tires a lot, but tires are the only thing that touch the road as far as the vehicle is concerned. And that puts us in a very unique situation, in a very unique position to be able to sense things from the road that no other car part or very few other car parts or truck parts are able to sense. For example, we can think about sensing if the road is rough or the road is smooth. We can think about sensing if there is friction to a certain level that will allow a certain type of driving to happen or not. We can do a lot of things by using the tire as a sensor. And what that enables is, if you are building an autonomous stack, you are likely telling the vehicle control systems to actuate the brake, the acceleration, etc. The tire information that is uniquely sensed by the tire can become a critical enabler of making the right decisions as far as the vehicle control systems are concerned. So an autonomous truck is nothing to be worried about if you're a driver sharing the same road. As a driver sharing the same road, we hope that you'll feel comfortable in the fact that Goodyear's tire is sensing the road conditions and is making the autonomous vehicle as safe as it can be with respect to driving. And then, of course, when you keep the vehicle and the fleet manager informed of the condition of the tire, we know that results in saved operational costs and better uptime. So there is a clear financial incentive for our fleet managers to be looking into that kind of data. But what is even more exciting from our perspective is that we have the ability now to start telling the vehicle what the tire is feeling from the road, and that knowledge allows the vehicle to drive safer and in a more efficient way.
Sum it up this way: the tire plays an absolutely critical role. Without a tire, you're not going to go from point A to point B. You're not going to get there. With the critical role the tire plays, especially in autonomy as the systems go to SAE level 4, in your personal opinion, why do you think the industry is not talking about this on a more broad scale? It's all about the stack. It's like, oh, tires, well, we need those. No, they're a critical part. Why do you think, in your opinion, it's not talked about a lot? The sensor stuff to me is a key, because the future of autonomy is going to be defined by sensors. You're going to have safety sensors that will be able to detect if your seatbelt's on, if there's impact, and the tire will be able to detect the quality condition of the road. Why do you think it's not talked about more?
Well, I can't speak to the broader industry, but I think Goodyear has been fairly vocal about it. We have talked about very, very clearly. We have announced when we were working with TuSimple, we did a press release. We have done others where we have announced clear intention from our perspective to integrate the tire data into some of these autonomous software stacks that are being built. And I'll tell you, we see a lot of enthusiasm and energy from these entrepreneurs who are building these stacks to be working with us. And maybe I do live in a world that is surrounded by my own orthodoxies, but in my world, there is a lot of energy from the people I work with. And so I think people will start to see this coming through. The car has also changed a lot over the last few years. I mean, my 2016, I have a 2016 Honda and another 2019 car. Even those cars are not super well connected as much as I would like them to be. But I think going forward, things will change. And as they change, I think you will see connectivity being a core part of the conversation in automotive. And what you're expressing, this slight frustration as to, hey, why aren't we talking about this more? I think that's about to change. We, from our world where we sit, we talk about this every day. This is our life. This is our bread and butter. And we love doing that. And we also see that the entrepreneurs who are building the cutting edge software that automates the driving process and automates the decision-making process for trucks and cars, we see these entrepreneurs also excited in engaging with us. So it is very much front and center in our world, in our conversations. I expect that the industry will catch up, and in the industry will also recognize the benefits of having this data connected up to the driving systems.
Me, as a Goodyear customer, or somebody who loves your tires, Can I get sensors in my tires today that I can say, hey, I got these incredible tires. You're never going to believe this. Check this out. Can I become a vocal advocate? Can I go out and purchase those tires today?
We are certainly working on our commercialization plans with respect to those intelligent tire sensors. So I would say stay tuned. Absolutely, the time will come. It is our intent to explore the different commercialization avenues and work with our channel partners to see how we can best do that. So my thing is stay tuned. Lots of exciting stuff to happen on our product roadmap. And we have engineers working tirelessly to exactly make that happen for you. So we'll get to that point very, very shortly.
As a consumer, I can't wait to have Goodyear intelligent tires. So thank you for working on that commercialization. We talked about trends earlier in society of what you saw when you launched the fund. And there's two in the mobility sector, two giant trends: the electrification of mobility and autonomy. How is this going to impact Goodyear's tire business? We talked about the sensors. Are there other things that are emerging as you look to continue to innovate on this 100+ year history of a great company that keeps innovating and innovating?
Absolutely. We are excited for the changes that are happening from an electrification perspective. And I'll talk to you from a product perspective as well as a services perspective, because both those areas are impacted. From a product perspective, I think there are a few ground truths about electric vehicles. Because of the battery configuration, they tend to be heavier. And because of just by their very construction, they tend to be able to accelerate faster. So that means a very different set of operating conditions. I mean, if you have been inside a Tesla and you've kind of pressed on the pedal, you would feel the amount of acceleration that you get inside the car, and it's absolutely thrilling. I love being inside one of those. And it has a very different set of requirements that the tire has to meet. And also, for example, when you don't have engine noise, you want to make sure that the tire doesn't contribute towards the noise in the cabin. So we are trying to make it as quiet as we possibly can. So all those product initiatives are underway, and we are working very closely with some of our OEM customers and indeed end users to understand how the tire needs to evolve. We think we have a clear idea of some of the technical demands that will be created by the electric vehicles, and we are confident of meeting those demands. And on the services side, not many people may know this, but Goodyear has hundreds of company-owned services outlets and thousands of franchised services outlets, both for consumer cars and for commercial trucks. You can come in here if your car is experiencing some issues. You can have us taking a look at those issues, and you can absolutely have those fixed to the extent we offer those services. That also will be impacted, and we are starting to learn about those impacts as we are studying the electric vehicle landscape. As you know, electric vehicles have far fewer parts and pieces to them, and we are exploring what that means for the type of services that we will end up offering through our retail footprint, etc. So there's a lot of excitement in terms of what we are learning about electrification and some of the changes that it implies for us. And we believe we are on top of some of those trends as we go out into the market and produce the right products and services for supporting the electrification trends and happening.
Goodyear's retail network will be a strategic advantage as we move into the future of electrification, the future of autonomy. Since you mentioned fleets, you can cut a deal with Acme Autonomy, and perhaps they go there at night to charge and get clean, leveraging your retail footprint. So I think there's going to be a lot of things that are going to happen where that becomes a really big strategic asset for Goodyear. Staying on the electrification theme here, diving back into your investment portfolio, Goodyear Ventures recently invested in AmpUp, an EV charging network. What did you see? Was this to help learn the charging aspect of it? You've got an incredible knowledge on tires. You understand electrification from your fleet portfolio. And I got to give a shout out to Aaron Spring, who's absolutely awesome on the Goodyear team, who joined us on the SAE podcast to talk all about that. What did you see in AmpUp?
Yeah, we saw a group of highly driven entrepreneurs who are, ushering in electrification. So we absolutely loved working with Tom and Tim and the team in AmpUp. And what we saw in their vision was they wanted to build this software platform that enables site hosts, fleet managers, utility companies, and end users to manage and customize the charging experience in a way that works for everybody. And so what we saw in AmpUp was that vision that really aligns with what we wanted to learn in the electrification landscape as well, because we are also servicing our electric fleet customers, and Go by Goodyear is one of our predictive fleet servicing platform. So we have a lot to learn in the electrification space, and companies like AmpUp are really helping us learn about the charging aspects that we think will position us well. We are, of course, also excited to introduce AmpUp to some of our electrifying customers who want to understand how to best bring about that change in their fleets. So AmpUp is also supporting some of our customers in those conversations. So, and internally, as we electrify our own footprint, we are learning a lot from AmpUp as well in terms of how to best do so. So all of those things have been terrific synergies. But yeah, the software approach to simplifying charging for multiple stakeholders is what got us attracted to the AmpUp, and it continues to be a really, really great relationship that we have with them.
You bring up a very valid point. One that's not talked about enough is the software layer that lives on top of the electrification. You look at just your average consumer has an electric vehicle. They might have a charge point account, EV box account, Electrify America, and they've got 3 apps. So I got to get this app out. I have to get this app. It's not a fun experience because you don't have to get a different app out to go to Sunoco versus Shell versus Exxon. You just put the credit card in and away you go. So I think that's a very valid point where software in the future, somebody's going to own the space. So you go to Electrify America, charge point, EV box, any charger. You don't have to go, I got to get this app, I got to get that app. It's all seamless. So thanks for bringing that point up. That's a trend that I see that's going to really accelerate as we go into 2022. That's a strategic investment on your part, which raises the question, will electrification play a large role in the fund as we look towards the next 2 or 3 years?
Oh, absolutely. And I think you alluded to the customer experience around electrification. We, of course, have to be a little bit more patient. Because if you look at internal combustion engines, if you look at, they had a better part of 100 years to evolve into what they are today. So we go out with our cars in the relative security of knowing that we will have a gas station to get refilled if we needed to refill. And that infrastructure has been built for a very long time. We think that electrification infrastructure is coming, and it's already coming at a much, much faster pace than what we thought even 5 years back. So we are confident that it wouldn't be that long, of course, for electrification to take hold. And as a result of that, and precisely for the reasons that you mentioned, we want to explore electrification inside the portfolio, and it remains one of our key pillars of investment.
Customer experience is going to define this. At the end of the day, if the customer's not happy, this all falls apart. So very valid point on there. The electrification of infrastructure is coming. It's only going to scale. Then on the other side of that, how can you ensure that it's always working? You go on Reddit or Twitter and you always see these stories. I went to charge my vehicle, but the charger was broken. I have nobody to call. I don't want this vehicle anymore. Uh-oh. That's a big societal problem that the industry and the infrastructure partners are going to have to get over and solve, because at a gas station, if one pump's broken, you just go to the next one on the other side. It's very simple. So we have to get over that.
That's where I think private capital can play a very, very key role in enabling. For example, say you have a services company that focuses on uptime of these charging hardware units. That's a great business, I think, to be in and to be doing. So I'm just picking a random example of the types of things that as investors we should be looking into to make sure that consumers get the best experience possible when they are looking for reliable charging options. So yeah, that's very much our goal, and enabling some of these entrepreneurs who are also like-minded in pursuing those outcomes will fit very well with our fund.
Does consumer experience play a large role in the fund when you look at companies in the way that what their customers say, whether it be a commercial customer or just a regular customer?
Yeah, indeed. We look at the offering end to end and make sure that the eventual end users of what the startup is building get the type of experience they want. And that's key for the startup to be growing in the first place. So the answer is resoundingly yes.
Looking at the fund and the way it's being deployed, is this Goodyear's vision of the future mobility in terms of where the investments are going, where we think there's going to be autonomy, there's going to be electrification, there's going to be fleet management software? Is the fund the vision of where Goodyear believes the future mobility is going?
We're certainly trying to explore the future with the fund. But I will say, as Goodyear, we have multiple initiatives that are launched to that effect. We have a very exciting portfolio of R&D programs that are also very exploratory in nature towards that very same goal. So the fund is adding a capability towards what you just referred to as exploring the future of mobility. And we are very excited to have this new capability. But it's certainly not the only capability that we have, but it complements and fits the rest of the portfolio of things that we are doing inside our R&D programs, whether it's new materials, safer materials, whether it's more sustainable materials, whether it's more mobility in a safer and more efficient way. All of those things complement the activities of the fund towards us gaining a deeper understanding of what is needed for customers and users of the future.
Taking this up another notch, what is your vision of the future of mobility?
I do feel like mobility can be much safer than it is today. It can be much more efficient than what it is today. And I hope it can be more fun than what it is today. And all those things, I think, are areas and certainly more sustainable. So those are probably the four things that I would say I want to see more in the mobility landscape. So imagine yourself sitting in a car and being able to read a book. That would be, I think, more fun than having to keep your eyes and hands on the wheel and on the road. So there is certainly an ability there for autonomy to come in and make our journeys more fun that way. Sustainability is a key element to which electrification is playing a role. So that's clearly a trend that we are seeing, getting accelerated. And safety is always paramount. So we have to make sure that everything that we do is first and foremost safe. Once that is assured, efficiency, fun, and sustainability and all those things will be critical aspects as well. So all of those things are what make, to me at least, a compelling future that remains to be explored and unleashed as far as mobility is concerned.
If you can build a safe, enjoyable ride, you have trust with the public. When you have trust with the public, you can build a business. And you mentioned fun. I've been thinking about this for a long time. You're in a safe, autonomous vehicle. You mentioned reading a book. I say, wait a second. What if you augment the glass and then put a commerce layer on top of that, where an individual, say you're reading your book and you might be going through an area where that book was written about, and it says, hi, for 99 cents, would you like to have an audio tour of where we're going or where this book was written or about the history of this? Okay, that's really interesting. And you start to create these really, really interesting experiences. Then if there's some way to tap into the sensor of the tire, if it's you're reading a book about when there's horse and buggies, maybe it does something to build that really, really interesting experience that becomes profitable. That's going to be really fun. I know that's a future that's a little bit ways out there, but it's one that I'm really bullish on.
Absolutely. I probably gave away my age a little bit by mentioning a book because I still have a lot of fun in picking up a paperback copy. The other thing that I didn't mention, and I think is more and more important as we move forward, is the access to mobility. We know that it's a critical enabler of moving society forward. And I think there is a lot that we can do improving the access to mobility. And again, things like autonomy can improve those things. We can go places where people don't have equal access to mobility. And all those things, I think, are things to be excited about what we can do for the future.
Books are cool. You should see my nightstand, how many books that I'm actively reading. So you can't beat a book, and just please, if you're listening, pick up a book. You might learn something really cool. They're one of the greatest gifts you have in life are books. And I'm a huge fan of books and encouraging children early to read and read a lot. Access to mobility, that's a big deal. Because there's transit deserts that have been well reported, and with autonomy, if you can allow a single mother to go get a better job or send their kid to a better school, think about the positive impact that you'll have on them as a family, but the positive impact you'll have on society. Or years and years ago, I wrote a blog post when I lived out in California about children, and I didn't realize living in the Los Angeles area how many children never went to a desert, never got to experience a desert ecosystem. And I wrote this whole blog post, if you can allow a mother or a single father or a family to go out into the desert, to go to Joshua Tree to experience what the desert ecosystem is, you could spark something in that child's mind. That child can go on to build something that has a positive impact on society. And autonomy is going to allow that. Another thing I also learned when I lived out there, we had the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles. A lot of children didn't have the ability to get there because there was no way for them to get there. I was like, that's sad. A child can see a dinosaur or learn something about history. Autonomy can fix that. That's going to be the really great gift with autonomy. And we have to get there because autonomy is not for me. It's not for you. I look at it, it's for the kids that might not have access to museums or be able to go to the library, that might have more interesting books that the local library might not have. That's going to have a positive impact on society. And we're going to look back one day and say, you know what? That ride that child took, That changed the child's life, and that child's now running a Fortune 100 company because they had access to that library, to that museum. And that's when this becomes special.
Absolutely. Safety, efficiency, sustainability, fun, access, all these things. And there's just a lot to be done. And I'm excited for private capital participating in bringing those changes on board, and we being a part of that ecosystem. I think it makes for a very exciting future, and why I feel excited about doing what I do every day.
Without private capital, this whole thing implodes. We need private capital. We need more private capital. You're doing a really good job of creating a healthy market, making really savvy investments. And you mentioned sustainability and efficiency. One of your portfolio companies is Envoy. That's a really savvy business model where they're partnering with big developers and putting electric vehicles for use there. Where do you see the Envoy business going from an investor's perspective?
Yeah, Envoy, we are very excited about them. They are one of those early movers in making adoption of electric vehicles in high occupancy areas a reality. And we love that about them. So they're really putting an electric vehicle in front of people in apartment buildings for people to share the use of that car. And they're building a community of EV users who can actually convince each other and others through their experiences to adopt electrification. So we really like Envoy from that perspective. And of course, we like to look at that as an opportunity to understand what we need to do from a product and solutions perspective to support a fleet like theirs. We are really actively working with them. So that's the investor perspective. I think they're making EVs accessible to people in those communities, and people are experiencing riding some of these electric vehicles that they have. And I think it's playing into the overall broader trends of electrification and driving consumer adoption of electric cars. So really excited for what they're doing in the market and what we can do for them to support their growth.
They're a fleet-based model. Do you look at other potential investments that you can scale through a fleet rather than where the business has to one by one, but fleet sales?
So we have a very strong fleet business. We have a history of supporting some of America's leading fleets. So as they electrify, we will be keeping a close eye on their needs. And as models evolve and as products and solutions evolve, we'll be bringing them, I'm sure, to market to support their needs. So that's a very clear way to gain scale, as you mentioned. And we will keep an eye on how the electrification is happening in their markets, in the fleet markets that we are already actively player in. And we will be absolutely bringing those solutions to those markets according to their needs.
We've covered a lot of ground during this podcast. We emphasized private capital, and you were 100% spot on. Putting this entire conversation into context, what is the future of Goodyear Ventures?
I think the future is really a place where we are known as a CVC of choice for entrepreneurs. We want to be actively working with entrepreneurs to create the future of mobility. We want to be actively bringing the best of Goodyear to those entrepreneurs. One of the ways we do that is we have a startup liaison person dedicated inside our team whose full-time job is to make sure that the startup is getting the support they need from us internally. And this position is responsible for supporting all the internal projects that the startups have. So really, it's all about becoming that corporate venture fund that entrepreneurs can go to with confidence, knowing that we will be supporting them in their mission and their vision. So that is something that we are working hard to achieve, and we are already on our way to achieving with some of the portfolio companies that you mentioned and we talked about. And really, that's our goal, to be the CVC mobility CVC of choice for entrepreneurs to be working with.
Something tells me as the fund grows and matures, you will become the capital of choice. When you mentioned startup liaison, this funny thing went through my head, and I got to say, there's a scene in the movie Big with Tom Hanks where he gets a job and he plays with the toys all day. Do you have an individual on your team that goes and meets with these startups and get to go for a ride in this vehicle or learn about this technology? Tom Hanks got to play with really cool toys, but now we're older, we got bigger toys. Does somebody on your team get to go learn about and play with all these new toys?
Yeah, you won't believe. I think it is the coolest job in the entire team, and everyone's jealous about this person. So, yeah, this role is the coolest. I mean, one day you sit inside a truck that is driving by itself. The other day, you go see what an air taxi is doing in moving people from Manhattan to JFK in a few minutes, avoiding traffic. And so you get to experience all of that stuff as we do our diligence and even after diligence to understand the startup's offering. And this role is central towards our understanding and building our understanding of how the startups operate. And boy, are we jealous of this person. Yes.
Now, if you just get to go to FAO Schwartz and go on the piano and play the famous song, then you got the home run. That sounds like a wonderful job. And as we look to wrap up this insightful conversation, what would you like our listeners to take away with them?
We would love for the listeners to kind of take away the fact that we are actively creating the future of mobility, that Goodyear is a mobility tech company as much as it is a tire company. And so we really want that to come through to our customers, to our partners, and our stakeholders. This fund is a key enabler of that overall vision that we are really going after to become a mobility tech company in addition to where we are as a tire company. So I would love for listeners to take away that. If that's the one thing that they can take away from today's conversation, that would be it.
Goodyear is a mobility tech company that has a wonderful fund that should become your first stop for mobility startup, because you can access incredible insights and talents instead of an incredible company that continues to innovate and has a long record of innovating. And then maybe you never know, if your company IPOs, you can maybe get a ride in the blimp, because they got a really cool blimp that goes to major sporting events. And the future is bright, the future is autonomous, and the future is Goodyear. Abhijit, thank you so much for coming on the Road to Autonomy today.
Thank you for having me. Much appreciated the opportunity to tell our story.
You're very welcome. Your story's only beginning. Thank you for listening to the Road to Autonomy podcast. If you've enjoyed listening, please rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Want to get in touch? Follow us on Twitter @Road to Autonomy or email podcast@brulteco.com. The Road to Autonomy is produced by Brulte & Company. The views and opinions expressed on the Road to Autonomy podcast do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of Brulte & Company. The content discussed on this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be taken as legal, tax, investment, or business advice.